It's Friday, January 19th. Let's talk PlayStation. Just a little update from last week. I'm still recovering from the cold that I was mentioning before. I actually had gotten worse after filming that video. Now I'm feeling a little bit better, but I'm just letting you know if I clear my throat or something during this video. I apologize. Moving on to our first news story about firmware for PlayStation 4. Yes, we got firmware 5.05 available for PS4. Right now, it improves system performance. That's all well and good. The interesting tidbit here is that actually beta signups are now available for 5.5. So, of course, Sony has some pretty incremental updates with their firmwares, and the halfway point is always usually a pretty interesting one. You can certainly see some actual decent features out of the 0.5 updates, and you'd have to expect you'd probably get 6.0 around like I don't know, like September, October, maybe around there. But right now, 5.5 is going to be coming. Well, the beta is going to be coming soon. But anyway, go to the PlayStation, your local PlayStation blog. Your local, not like it's a physical place you can go to, but your specific territory, and you can do beta signups, and hopefully you'll beta test 5.5 soon. But anyway, moving on to places you actually can physically go to, because this would make a lot more sense. In North America, you can actually go to GameStop January 26th and get that special edition Monster Hunter PS4 Pro, which we had mentioned a long time ago. It was announced for Japan. People were kind of bummed out because we didn't have any clue if this was coming to the West. Well, it is. So actually, in North America, it's going to be exclusively at GameStop. Day and date with the game. In Europe, I believe there's no restrictions. You can get the system anywhere. But, of course, limited quantities for this very special Monster Hunter PS4 Pro. So if you are interested in getting this thing, I recommend you do so. Also, you can actually now get a standalone Glacier White PS4 Pro, which previously I believe this was only available with the Destiny 2 bundle. So if you are interested in the white one as well, I'd probably get that soon too. I'd imagine there's probably way more Glacier White PS4 Pros than the Monster Hunter one, but I would also take a wild guess and say that they're not going to be making the white ones forever. Black will always be the baseline model, so if there's any interest, get whatever you want now. Now, despite the fact that we don't have a release date for God of War coming this year, rumors are still pointing to March and things like that. Hopefully we get an announcement soon, but we do have an announcement for a collector's edition of the game, because why wouldn't this have a collector's edition? And it is a beast of a collector's edition. It's going to be 150 bucks. It's going to come with a huge statue, like a bunch of keychains and stuff. You're obviously going to get a steel book and then a bunch of digital goods. But this thing looks pretty dope. More specifically, the statue itself looks awesome. Sign me up. This thing looks great. So who really didn't see that coming at all whatsoever? Of course, this game's going to get a collector's edition. In fact, I'd be hard-pressed to be shocked if, like, Sony's later games this year, like Days Gone or Detroit Become Human, Dreams, I mean, a lot, Spider-Man, PS4, I feel like a lot of these games are all going to get collector's editions, so at least we know what this one's getting. And boy, we are segueing nicely. Speaking of Days Gone, let's go into that. That's going to be our next news story. So, this came out recently. According to a second-hand report, community content manager Jarryd Howard, who works on Star Citizen, I was on a live stream, and he said he had recently talked to the actor, Sam Witwer, who plays the main dude in Days Gone, and apparently that actor had said that he actually filmed a bunch of, like, there's actually a lot of cutscenes in Days Gone. Basically, the news story is that, because the thing is, anytime we see Days Gone, it's always, like, just straight gameplay. We don't see a whole lot of, like, story elements to the game, which obviously we know it is going to have some, right? But I think a lot of people have this big connotation with Days Gone of being just this kind of sprawling open world, more gameplay-oriented type game, and you're not really getting any sort of substance or meaningful story or meaningful plot. And apparently that's not the case. The game it does have on record a lot of cutscenes, apparently, and a lot of like the actors did a lot of recordings and things like that. So, and you know, we haven't really seen, that's the thing, we haven't seen a whole lot of substance to the actual story and stuff. Which is interesting, because a lot of the times, and especially with Sony's games, we always get lots of cutscenes, and then we finally get gameplay sort of near the end, like the later half of the pre-release of a specific title. In Days Gone, we're seeing mostly gameplay. It was shown off with just gameplay, which is cool, and it's always a nice change of pace to have that. But if you had any reservations about Days Gone not being a meaningful story-related game, hopefully this will keep you a little bit at ease until we learn more about the game this year. Now, I'm not really sure how to approach this news story, because it's like one of those he said, she said things, and there's really, like, this story has been sitting for a little bit, and no meaningful things have really come out afterwards. So, but anyway, it's certainly Sony related. I feel like I can't really ignore it, especially because I love Quantic Dream, and I talk about them a lot. and I talk about Detroit Become Human a lot. So 3 separate publications this past week made a litany of allegations against Quantic Dream's basic work behavior, like their work environment. Apparently, and this is all allegedly, of course, but this is from 3 separate publications, that former employees have complained about just a terrible work environment, somewhat toxic work environment, sexual harassment, and things like that. Not necessarily sexual harassment, I guess, but certainly like excessive profanity being used around the workplace, and you know, possibly racist jokes being thrown around and things like that. Just all around kind of a seedy, you know, not very adult-oriented environment. Or maybe very adult-oriented, depending on how you want to look at it. Quantic Dream quickly followed up on this, responded saying that these allegations aren't true at all whatsoever. David Cage, of course, head of the company, got kind of overly defensive about it, saying, you know, how, you know, that's ridiculous. How could you say something like that? I've worked with Ellen Page and things like this, and which my initial reaction is like, okay, well, that's, I mean, obviously the guy's going to defend himself, although you can't necessarily play the my friend, I have black friends card. You can't play that card and make it seem like you're gonna be all well and good. But there's really not much to add, because, you know, you're gonna have a bunch of people saying something's true, and then you're gonna have, and then so obviously Quantic Dream saying that's just not the case, and nothing's really come of it. So I don't really know what to add. I certainly don't support anything like that. I think most people would agree that we don't support an unhealthy, toxic environment. Of course, you've seen in the media a lot lately, probably, unless you've been living under a rock. It's kind of a big deal. It's not cool to be mean to people. It's not cool to sexually harass people. You know, we should have been raised properly, you would hope. It's kind of disappointing that a lot of these conversations keep happening lately, and a lot of movements are coming forward with people not being super comfortable talking about situations they've dealt with in the past. You know, I don't have to. That's the thing. It goes into this is a whole minutia of a conversation that I shouldn't have to get into, but hopefully this is not actually the case at Quantic Dream. Although I will say, you know, I don't know, it's still a he said, she said thing. The problem is when you have former employees complaining about something, my gut reaction is, well, why would they really do that unless it actually happened? But then you also think, okay, well, if this could get into a lawsuit, a litigation, anything like that, you know what I mean? Then that's a possibility for money. That's like, fraud's a very real thing. Who says that isn't a daily occurrence? So there's really not much I can add to this until maybe more reports or evidence or things like that, or an investigation opens up, or you know what I mean? Like, so we're gonna have to leave that. We're gonna have to leave this as it is right now. For our final news story, I knew I had to include this. I love hearing about this stuff, and more importantly, I love offering this stuff to you guys and giving everybody. It gives everybody a little bit of perspective about the people that work so hard to make the games that we enjoy. Bruce Straley, of course, who recently had left Naughty Dog after finishing up Uncharted 4. He was the director of Last of Us, many Uncharted games. Bruce has been with the company for a very long time, 17 years, and he had recently left. He had went on sabbatical after finishing up Uncharted 4, and then the months just kind of kept going on, and then he announced his actual departure of the company, and he never actually detailed why that he left. And I remember when we were talking about this, I had assumed that it was probably burnout, because that happens a lot for developers that work at very high-profile companies, especially big-budget, you know, games like the ones that Naughty Dog pumps out, the multi-billion-dollar projects. These really take a toll on people. Another big example was Ken Levine, where he said he finally got burned out of, you know, being at the head of a 100-person team where you don't even know everybody's name, and you got to get, you know, you have a deadline to hit, and it just gets very stressful. It's a very stressful work environment. And Bruce was talking about this at greater length with Jason Schreier at Kotaku on their podcast Splitscreen. Really great. It's a really great listen. I recommend anybody go if they have the extra time to listen to the whole thing. But I am going to share a quote with you from Bruce, detailing, going into a little bit about the actual reason of why he left, which, yeah, it was pretty much burnout. But this is kind of a long quote, but stick with me. It's really interesting. So I'll start you off here. He says, "And then Uncharted 4 showed up, and it was like, I guess there's a difference between doing something for yourself which feels passionate. And I had my own theories that I was trying to expand upon between Uncharted 1, 2, and The Last of Us. And then Uncharted 4 became more like, how do I do this for the team and for the company? because we needed to get the game out the door, and we needed it to be something good. So that it didn't put a mark on the Naughty Dog name, I felt like, I guess in hindsight, I took on that role more for the team than me personally. Also, we did that game in 2 years. From the moment that Neil Druckmann and I stepped on, almost to the day, 2 years to create that beast, that then became the hardest project. So there was this constant. It had nothing to do with Naughty Dog, nothing to do with the games, it's just me. I'm a perfectionist, what we're going after, just AAA, everything all culminated into, oh my god, it's time to take a break, it's time to just step away. I worked out a deal with Naughty Dog co-presidents Evan Wells and Christoph Balestra at the beginning of Uncharted 4 before I stepped on, that look, if I'm going to do this, I need some time off, and they knew what that meant. To their credit, they appreciated what I was willing to do, and what it was going to take to get it done, and without batting a lash, they said, sure. So utmost respect to them as leaders and people who saw what needed to happen, and respecting my time and my energy, and giving me the time off. Just to jump forward, having that time off, it just kind of eked into what was a few months became more months, you know. It was really hard getting back to the job and feeling as energized as I was back in The Last of Us or Uncharted 2, and so I just felt that there was a shift in me. Something else was building up in me that was like, alright, let's see what else is out there. And prior to the quote, he kind of talked about how initially one of the toughest things that Naughty Dog had done was doing Uncharted 1, and we've covered that story a few times as well, Naughty Dog doing Uncharted 1, which real quick, the story there, of course, was that the original Uncharted was very overwhelming for Naughty Dog because they were moving from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3. They were throwing out all their old resources and building all these entirely new ones. And not only that, but taking a completely different approach with how they make games, because at the time they had done stuff like Jak and Daxter, and Uncharted was a lot more of a grounded game. But yes, interesting stuff. Uncharted 4, I mean, what's incredible is that they got the game done in 2 years. I mean, I think we all give Naughty Dog some pretty high praise. They are a top-tier developer. The kind of stuff they put out is just amazing. But to know that they got it done that quickly is pretty incredible, especially given the fact that actually Uncharted 4 saw a numerous amount of delays, which made it seem like, oh my god, this game's taking forever, blah, blah, Sony always delays their games. But it really is something else. And I to this day, probably could not imagine the high-level caliber amount of stress that not only Bruce, but everybody on the team deals with when making a game like that. And it comes out, we all enjoy it. But you just know that for some people that was really putting them just past a certain point where even though you've been doing it for such a long time as a living, you just have to take a step back and even walk away from one of the biggest video game developers currently available. Those are some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week, so hopefully I can film new stuff soon, because I am dying here. And I was really worried too, because I kept getting, like, worse after last week, and I was like, dude, I don't want to have to, like, film, you know, Let's Talk PlayStation feeling like this, because that's the one thing I'll ever miss. You guys know that. I may suck with all my over-promising, but I never miss these. And so I was like, oh, dude, I can't miss that, and I'm getting a little bit better, but I'm telling you guys, I have a bunch of things written down on my phone, on my computer. I'm filming new stuff as we speak. I just want to film up enough stuff so that way I can have a decent amount, like a decent, you know what I mean, like a roadmap of things that I can upload periodically and kind of get a good jump start on it so I can keep it going. Because once I start going, I don't want to be in a situation where we're at right now, where, oh, it's just LTPS every single week. I want to have a decent amount of videos backed up so that way I can get a constant flow going, because that's like what happens. That's why I did so many Ryan on Gamings for like close to a year, where it was always on the dot every week, because I would back up a few videos just to be sure in case I was extra busy that week with personal life or or my actual job. So I'm building up a lot of videos now. And then the release, the actual constant stream of videos will start up again soon. Thank you so much for your patience, guys, because I really am doing a lot of cool stuff, a lot of good stuff soon. So, thank you very much. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Berney. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.